Hi everyone, welcome again to another Teacher Joseph video clip. Today's weekly lesson is called My Friend Kareem, or My Mate Kareem, because mate and friend means the same in English, and particularly in the southern parts of the UK where they use standard English. You hear a lot of people talking about the mates. Oh, I'm going out with my mate tonight. My mate said this. My mate did that. It's very, very common, very popular. This week's theme, more or less, is all about diversity and how we can, well, agree to disagree, respect people, even if we don't necessarily agree with them completely. And in English, we generally use the phrase to take the higher road or to take the higher view when we're talking about these things. One phrase from my weekly lesson this week is about chalk and cheese, where Kareem says that he's worried because his wife and him are like chalk and cheese. We use the phrase chalk and cheese when two things look completely different, with absolutely no relation to one another. When I was younger, many people would describe my brother and I as chalk and cheese. Sometimes when we meet kids or even people, we can sometimes say, they're like chalk and cheese. It means they're absolutely nothing alike. And that can mean both in physical appearance, but it also can mean in character as well. And of course, Kareem, in this week's lesson, when he said it, he was talking about the character of his wife. He was saying, I'm worried because we're like chalk and cheese and we're going to get married. You know, sometimes when we talk about these things, it's very easy to try to think about sides, being good or bad, being right or wrong, and to look for causes. You know, George Orwell, I don't know if you remember who that is. He's the guy that wrote 1984. He said something lovely, and I'm going to read it for you now, if I can just find it here. It's basically a quote of his from the 1930s. To give you some background, he, for some reason, had decided that the reason why humanity is in such a mess, and bearing in mind this was in the 1930s, he was saying that it's because of sport, and in particular, competitive sport. Let's read together and see what he said, okay? So I'm just reading from George Orwell, okay? He said, serious sport has nothing to do with fair play. It is bound up with hatred, jealousy, boastfulness, disregard of all rules, and sadistic pleasure in witnessing violence. In other words, it is war minus the shooting. He's probably right. And when we think about these kinds of things, you know, when we think about not only sport, I mean, those same rules could be applied to politics today. Witch burnings in the 17th century, it was the same. There's some bit of us that's quite sadistic in looking for pleasure. And so sometimes when we're faced with a decision of choosing good or bad, we often just choose the worst, the bad part of things, you know. The media, they often present us with facts which invite us to take a bad view of these people or to take the wrong side, you know. bad man does bad thing. It's very common. And so I think we really need to be guarding our minds against these hidden messages which are given to us in all different strange ways. There's an author, one of my favorite ones, she once said, you need to stand porter at the door of thought. It means you need to be careful what you let into your mind because negativity, bad thinking, and particularly this duality of good and bad can uh, travel quicker than any virus can, and in many ways can be more deadly. This is why we need to find ways of changing our thinking to be more tolerant of others and realizing that we're never going to be the center of our own universe with everything revolving around us, just as well, really. And that's all I wanted to say for today. So, chalk and cheese, a very common English idiom when things are very, very different from one another. I could say that about my students. From one to another, they are chalk and cheese. And I have to meet them on the level that they present themselves in order to try to lift their English higher. None of us like to think about belief systems or to use that word. It's not really fashionable anymore of spirituality, but ultimately what you believe is going to decide for you how successful you are in English. If you come from a system of good and bad, and some people and some things are bad, you're not going to get very far with English learning because you'll keep seeing bad things everywhere. Bad teacher, bad book, bad grammar. So it's about reframing and seeing the good. And in learning, that's really, really important because otherwise you'll just drift away very quickly with the next bad thing that comes along, in your opinion. That's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. And remember, chalk and cheese is a very good idiom when you see two things at work or two things which are different. They're like chalk and cheese. Chalk being the carbon the teacher used to use to write on the blackboard. I don't think they use those anymore. In fact, I don't even think we're allowed to use the word blackboard anymore. It's whiteboard now, isn't it? And cheese, of course, is the cheese that we eat made from milk. Right? Bye.